It might seem obvious what the franchise's roadmap is, but that's not always the case. The franchise is currently working on remakes and mainline installments, of course, but the IP is at an interesting point in development where significant changes may be made. Resident Evil has recently shown that it can introduce fresh, exciting protagonists alongside classic characters and isn't afraid to change the gameplay genre. For instance, Resident Evil 9 might represent yet another significant change. The conclusion of Resident Evil Village contained what appeared to be a clear sequel tease, and given that it was not followed up on in DLC, that tease now seems more likely. Instead, Resident Evil Village Shadows of Rose 550 told a fragmented story about Ethan Winters' daughter that most likely won't connect to Resident Evil sequels for a very long time. Resident Evil 9 might not be what fans had anticipated because of the franchise's numerous unanswered questions and unresolved issues, such as whether the series will continue to take place in the present or not. Another new turning point in the franchise is marked by Resident Evil 9. Because it must make some important decisions regarding the franchise's future, Resident Evil 9 will be a turning point. In addition to deciding whether to play from a first-person, third-person, or both points of view, Resident Evil will need to choose a new protagonist or bring back a classic character like Chris Redfield. Additionally, it must decide whether horror will remain its main genre. Technically speaking, the Winters saga would still be continuing if Resident Evil 9 carried on Chris' epilogue thread. Because Mia was so unimportant in Resident Evil Village and its Shadows of Rose 550, it is extremely unlikely that she will appear in it. Although Resident Evil 9's direction would otherwise seem securely situated in newfound horror, it does give Capcom the chance to diversify the franchise further. The return of Resident Evil to a city like Raccoon City would be fantastic. But it's possible that the series will initially focus on domestic and remote settings. Resident Evil the 9th of May once more spanned genre boundaries. With Chris Redfield's playable scene, the series once more shifted away from survival horror and toward action. Furthermore, these scenes in Resident Evil games where players are supposed to pelt enemies with the ammo they have undoubtedly saved throughout are not uncommon. However, if the gameplay in a sequel follows this pattern, it may be a sign that the emphasis on action-oriented gameplay is making a comeback. However, it would be amazing to see Chris in a Resident Evil that is solely focused on horror, perhaps with a few more weapons or combat-ready attacks in his toolbox. With Leon Kennedy's new knife parry and other potential combat techniques that an untrained civilian may not be expected to perform, the Resident Evil 4 remake could be preparing for that. It could be too similar to the Winters if Resident Evil 9 tries to portray a different family that the player is not familiar with. However, as long as Resident Evil's core atmosphere and survival horror mechanics are maintained, any new direction has potential. In the interim, Resident Evil 4 will satisfy that itch and give players the chance to revisit a beloved franchise classic. There are rumors that Resident Evil 9 is in the works. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and support my channel.